you see.
Mm-hmm.
And in this way, he works unknown, but in becoming more and more open and broad about what he's saying. In the beginning, he didn't talk openly about what he's saying now. He's broader, and the world, in the people in, for instance, in Russia today, are hearing a stronger message from that of the people who heard him for weeks on end in Brazil. So all the time he is emerging, not in the sense of giving his name and saying, I am a world teacher. He never says that. He is simply, is incognito and simply one of us,
Right.
putting forward ideas that you or myself might put forward. And these are ideas of the oneness of humanity and the essential goodness of humanity, what he calls the fact that we are all of us gods. He sees humanity as divine. We don't think of ourselves as divine, but Maitreya very much does think all human beings as potential gods. And everyone living in the world, from whatever country, whatever background, whatever teaching, whatever upbringing, whether in prison or living the high life or helping the poor and suffering, we are all essentially potential gods on the way to transform oneself and therefore humanity, to show the true quality of humanity, that it is absolutely spiritual. And he says everything is spiritual. There is nothing which is not spiritual. We separate spiritual today, that is to do with religion. We call that spiritual, whether it is spiritual or not. But we call religious things spiritual, and we call financial things or relations between the nations, we call that not spiritual. Anything works. You can be as unspiritual as you like if you're working in a bank, a big bank. You can be making your millions. You can be defrauding the poor and getting away with it because you're a big smart banker. He said, that's not a spiritual way to work, but the banker is essentially as spiritual as the poor man, but he doesn't show it. He's further behind. It will take him longer. And I've come to speed up the process that it takes to show your divinity. He said, we are all divine. We have to be divine because there is nothing else. There is only divinity in life. The world is divine. Everything in the world is divine in one way or another. Whether it shows or not is up to humanity, because humanity has free will, and that free will is sacrosanct and is never infringed by humanity. So the speed by which we grow is left to us. But the world needs saving, the world needs protecting, and the masters save and protect the world against the worst actions of the worst men in the world, those who are most far from the spiritual path. But all of us, he says, are on the spiritual path, whether we know it or not. Mm-hmm. But it's a path. Some are near the end of the path, and the masters are at the end of the path. But some of them are nearer the masters, nearer the end of that path, and others are maybe just coming towards the path, coming near the path. And he comes to teach the poor, those who are in pain, that they too have a part to play in this great thing we call life. And that life is essentially spiritual. And this we should never forget. We are each of us souls in incarnation. People in the West don't believe in reincarnation, but people in the East broadly accept reincarnation, even if they don't quite understand it themselves. But they have the idea that if they are poor and living in terrible conditions and so on, as millions are in parts of the, say, India and Africa and China and other places, South America, it is not because, as they think, they have made terrible mistakes and been wicked and cruel in their past life. It is simply because they live in a country which has not yet chosen to transform its way of thinking and to make our country open to everybody and safe for everybody. And he says only one thing, broadly speaking, one thing that humanity can do will answer the needs of humanity. So the first thing is we need peace. Without peace, he said, we will have war, and if we have small wars, they will go into bigger wars, and if we have bigger wars, there will be nuclear wars, and if they're nuclear wars, they will destroy all life on planet Earth. Nothing would save humanity then. This world would become void, unable to sustain life in some part of the heavens. And nothing would live on this planet for millions and millions of years. He said, we have to rid the world of our dependence on nuclear radiation, close down our factories based on radiation, close down the factories which run the economies of the world through nuclear radiation. It is deadly, it is harmful on every level for humanity, and on levels that those scientists who think they understand and have tamed nuclear radiation, when they have not, levels which they don't even know about, levels which they don't have the tools, the mechanism of judging whether they have solved tamed nuclear radiation or not. He said, rid the world of the nuclear threat and make peace. And unless you do that, there is no future for humanity. He said, however, the tide is turning. Humanity is beginning to recognize what it needs to do. It needs to create peace. And he says, how do you create peace? He said, there is only one way to create peace. You have to make justice in the world. There is no justice in the world. There are people who are rich and live it, rich over millions of others. There are countries in the world where millions of poverty-stricken live out little miserable lives for a few swift and painful lives, who take their own lives because they can stand no longer the terrible circumstances of their lives. This in India, which is becoming one of the richer countries in the world, you still have millions of people who are starving to death, who are living in the streets. There is no justice. There is no justice in America. There's no justice in Europe. There's no justice in China or India or most of the world. How do you get justice? He said, only one thing will bring justice, and that is the principle of sharing. When you share, you recognize the God in your brother. When you share, he says, you take the first step into your divinity. When you share, you open the doors to peace and truth and the ability of all men to work together in peace for the good of all. And he says he has come for the good of all. He said, nothing so moves me to grief as this shame. The crime of separation must be driven from this earth. I affirm that as my purpose. He says, let me take you by the hand, take you into a land where where
no man lacks.
Where no man lacks, where no 2 days are alike, where the joy of brotherhood manifests to all men. I'm sorry.
No, this is absolutely beautiful, absolutely incredible. I'm just enthralled with what you're saying.
This is the nature of the Christ, the one who is among us now, the master of all the masters, the one who walked through Jesus 2,000 years ago, the one who comes as a simple man. You have no idea how simple, how modest. Yes, he is nothing but good.
What you've just said is absolutely beautiful, Benjamin, and I cannot agree with you more. And I don't think people understand that they don't need to have everything they have. I think modesty is the key to so much of what you're saying, and looking at the simplicity of the things around you. And once you stop with the simplicity, you stop seeing the beauty around you. We try to mask it with property, we try to mask it with riches,